everybody. Welcome back to OTT Executive Podcast. I'm Brian Mahoney, the CEO of Trend Research and the president of the OTT Executive Community. In this podcast series, we interview leaders of the industry to get to know a little bit about them and hopefully a lot from them. Today, we're joined by Steve Harnsberger. Welcome, Steve.
Hey, thanks, Brian. Happy New Year to you. It's great to be here.
This is great. Well, guess what? You're the first podcast of 2024, so it's very exciting. And we're going to talk about a really important topic today, universal search and discovery. Before we do, just a quick background on yourself, Steve.
Great. Well, I had the good fortune to be born in Northern California. You can see the view out my window behind me in San Francisco. And I went to Berkeley after growing up in Marin County, playing basketball. And when I went into business, I started in business development accidentally. I started with a technology company that had a very early electrically conductive ceramic. And instantly I realized taking new things and creating new businesses was what I like to do. We actually made a saltwater swimming pool electric chlorinator, and I got into the water business in the first decade and a half of my career. Ended up all over the world selling water recycling systems to the semiconductor packaging factories. So I was in China in the 90s. I was in Morocco, Thailand, Europe, south of France. I was in Malta, of all places, recycling water from industrial factories back into the factories and realizing these were factories that made semiconductors. And we were there, 5,000 people, and you could see pre-Google in the late 90s, you could see the adoption of the pager, pre-iPhone, that semiconductors and Moore's law were going to revolutionize the world. And so around 2000, that was in the first internet bubble, I joined Net TV. Net TV was a 60 million invested Pequot investment, and Net TV was the first time the big argument was, what will win, the set-top box or the computer to take over the living room? And of course, we all now know neither one, right? It's the operating system. So I worked for a lot of different people in the business, starting at the intersection of media and technology for the last 25 years, which is basically Silicon Valley meets Hollywood. And so I've worked for Deluxe, I've worked for Dell, I've worked for Macrovision, Rovi, TiVo, any number of companies. And accidentally, over these years of seeing what were the trends and what was happening when media hit Silicon Valley, which is still happening, as you know, I got into this universal search business in the last 5 years by accident when Roku hired the group I was with at Guidebox. They hired us to do universal search technology and data onboarding to the Roku search engine, which we found out turned out to be the greatest and most powerful user acquisition tool in the streaming business.
So okay, so I want to pause you there for a second because we had a lot to dig on there. But before that, I've known you for several years, right? You've been a speaker and you've been a sponsor at the OTT Executive Summit. I never knew that about you. I think it's really fascinating. I remember doing an interview earlier this year, a podcast with Colin Petrie Norris from Zumo, and he also has a background in water engineering, I think. So you guys are kindred spirits, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think it's what you do, not exactly what industry you do it in. That, the connecting with people and finding the end user and taking a problem with a solution and making it happen. That's what's interesting to me in my career arc. And now I have a little company, and we're the only ones focused on streaming, videos, SEO, search and discovery.
Okay. So let's break that down. So thank you for that background. Very interesting. I learned something. And good for you. And as a true entrepreneur, a fellow entrepreneur, you see an opportunity, and there's that creative process, and there's the business process, and there's that satisfaction of solving a problem, and also hopefully making some money in the process. So let's talk a little bit about that first project, if you don't mind, where you sort of saw this. And first of all, let's define the problem. What exactly is the challenge that you're trying to solve?
Well, I think first of all, people don't understand what we're even saying when we say universal search in streaming video.
Okay.
There's a search engine. Everyone understands Google search and as being the most powerful way to get your product or your company discovered in the world is you get your content into the Google search engine. Well, there's a search engine, only not an open one, not a public one, inside every operating system in the streaming ecosystem. Roku streaming search on the homepage is where we started. There's a search function. And when you search that function, it's one of the 6, 7 tabs on the homepage. It's actually searching content. It's looking for content. And what happens is if you search for Midnight in Paris, and that happens to be in the TNT app, and TNT was one of our first customers, if you've ingested your library into the Roku search spec, your app shows up and it says, watch Midnight in Paris for free on TNT. Install the app now.
Mm-hmm.
So that searching process uses content to market a channel that is often undiscovered. And the real problem is most people aren't in search.
Okay,
Okay.
so are we talking about both external sort of SEO search, like you mentioned Google? If I'm want to watch a show, I just Google it and be like, okay, where is this or whatever? Or are we picking it up from within the sort of search environment within, connected TV platform like a Roku, for instance?
We're focused almost exclusively on the connected television operating systems and search algorithms, each one of which has a proprietary metadata
Okay.
specification that you have to conform to. We take we'll learn things from Google and apply it, but we're not doing Google search engine
Okay.
stuff, except on Google TV. They have the same thing. On Google TV is different from Google search.
So one of the things I learned in a past conversation, and you did a brilliant job at the summit where we talked about search and discovery, is this idea, which is crazy to think that I could do a search for a very specific show that I want to see. Let's say Shawshank Redemption, which is one of my favorite movies, right? And it may not actually return, even though it's available, right? How is that possible? Like, what's not working in the technology where that should always work properly?
Well, this is technology and proprietary platforms getting in the way of what a user would expect, which is I just want to know where Shankshaw Redemption is.
Mhm.
And let's say one of our customers is Criterion. Okay, let's say they have that. Well, Criterion's library is available only inside of Roku right now. So if
Mhm.
you searched that and Shankshaw Redemption, their app would show up saying subscribe to Criterion,
Mhm.
rent it on Vudu, or maybe watch it for free on Pluto. So and all those big apps will be in search, but Criterion is not a dominant app. But
Okay.
Criterion's metadata has not been onboarded to the Apple TV OS or the Fire TV OS because there are industry problems and obstacles that stand in the way of doing it. First of all, Amazon, Apple, and Google only have a couple hundred channels that they've even onboarded. Roku
Mhm.
has thousands,
Right.
and it's difficult. So you have to be a big app. And then second of all, it's hard. Each platform has a different technical specification that isn't simple, and you have to learn and go through it. It may take 6 or 12 months to get your
Mhm.
data into the Alexa and Fire TV, into Siri and Apple TV, and into Google. It's not a simple technology process.
And am I searching for the app? You mentioned Criterion. Am I searching for the app or that app's content library or
No,
both?
you're exactly right. No, you're searching for content. People,
Okay.
the whole problem is like, I know what Criterion is because it's 25 years old, right? But when we said to Amazon, hey, we want to get Criterion into the Fire TV engine. And they said, what's that? They were unaware. So people aren't aware of these 10,000, 5,000 channels, but they
Mhm.
are aware of the most popular titles. So it's search for primarily for titles and stars that's driving in universal search, driving an app install and a CPM. The app is showing
Mhm.
up thousands of times every time someone's searching for someone in the library if we've onboarded them to the search engine.
Is it complicated by the fact, Steve, that you might have content found in more than one app? How do you sort of index that from a content perspective?
Well, that's the platform sorts that out. So you'll
Mhm.
see that it will come up. Most people want to see how can I watch it for free? They
Mhm.
don't want to say how do I watch it and pay $5.99 to rent it on Prime, or so they're looking for the smartest way to do it. Magnolia might be interesting because Magnolia is one of our clients, but you could put their movie up and say subscribe to Magnolia Selects and watch this for 3.99 a month, and it's saying well you have to rent that one title for 5.99.
Mhm.
So they're getting a marketing offer out of search, and the real thing is the search engines will display in the way they chose which of the apps they want to show that has the content in it. And oftentimes they will show a Roku channel will be by default
Hmm.
in search because Roku built the channel. So they built it in search. So
Hmm.
the platforms will defer to a higher revenue share app, but we
Right.
don't know exactly how much. The algorithms certainly point to a higher revenue to oneself as when you're in business. Why wouldn't you?
You get that, but I'm not sure, most consumers are aware that the algorithm is optimizing potentially that app or that platform, not necessarily your own pocketbook or your own user experience. Is that right?
I would say so. I would, it's pretty much it's not against the law to be hyper competitive. And when somebody searches for something, offer, oh, I have it on Amazon Prime or I have it on Freevee. That's not monopolistic.
Hmm.
There's another, it's a little bit arduous to click watch other options to watch might
Hmm.
be a button, and then other people may show up. So I think that this is a challenge, particularly for the small and middle-sized apps.
Yeah.
They're the ones that need to be discovered by search the most. They're the ones that aren't in search, and they're the ones that it's the most difficult to actually make sure that they're getting in a fair shake in how the results are displayed.
Yeah, for sure. That makes a lot of sense. And they don't have the marketing budget to promote their shows and to, rent space on the platform, for sort of for content or app discovery and so on. So let's get into the technology a little bit. What are the steps to, you mentioned it could take 6 to 12 months to get, full sort of availability of search for your content library. What are the types of things that you can do to help that process along?
Well, we've done hundreds of these.
Mhm.
So we built, in other words, if there's a Roku, we're a Roku's approved partner, Vizio's approved partner, and we've built processors that automatically create an on-spec feed. So whereas somebody else might take 60 days to develop a feed, when we have all the metadata, first thing is get the metadata in and get all of the correct metadata. That's
And
step
that's
one.
supplied by the app, right? So the metadata around
Supplied
their
by the
content
app.
library.
Right. And it comes oftentimes from a content management system, a
Okay.
CMS, that may be in-house or it may be one of the online video platforms. It could be Brightcove, it could be Aceto, it could
Mhm.
be Zype, any numbers of those guys, right? So we get the data into an engine and then we have a processor that automatically creates an on-spec feed. And then we go through a QC process that we know there's testing, there's test apps. You have to test the deep links in the app because when somebody sees Shankshaw Redemption and it says watch on Criterion, they click that. It has to open the Criterion app, install the Criterion app,
Mhm.
and then go to that title to show you watch Shankshaw on Criterion. So
Shawshank.
Shawshank, right?
Shawshank.
For
Yes.
the sign up for this opportunity to watch it. That 7 day
So
trial.
so if someone doesn't do that, if I'm an app and I'm so excited I just got on, let's say, Vizio and Roku and Samsung or whatever, and I connect, what is the how do I know there's a problem, right? Like, are there tests I can run to be like,
Well,
hey, my library is not showing up
well,
in search. It's, I have titles that are just kind of sitting there.
right. Well, we did Gravitas, an independent film app, right? They were not in search. And they had very little viewership. We were told 90% of their content was barely played because
Mhm.
it wasn't discovered. Independent films, good ones. And we onboarded them and they saw a 10 times increase in new app installations. Okay. So they didn't know what
Mhm.
they didn't know. And this is
Right.
the problem is that marketing departments is completely different in a streaming service from the advertising and market and the engineering department. This is accomplished by engineering, and
Mhm.
but it's what it actually does is it does a CPM. So it's the same as an advertisement, only you don't pay for it. And on Roku, if you place an ad, you pay $3 per app install. You place an ad and it says watch this show today, and then it says okay, fine. Well, each click costs $3.
Okay.
Okay, that's for your ad. When you put up search, and they went up 10 times in their app installs, the cost per install versus $3 of an ad was about 20 cents. So
Okay.
we're talking about $3 for an app install or a quarter based upon what the
So it's a
economic.
little bit analogous to SEO versus paid search, although, in this case, it's not totally free. There's still some cost involved in that, but
You're
it's the
paying, you're
idea.
paying us. You're paying us. But
Okay.
really, the truth of the matter is you can't pay to get placement in the search results.
Hmm.
And you can't say, I want to be first, and how much do I have to pay you? You
But you
can
at least
pay.
want to show up.
You just
right?
want to show up and let
Yep.
their algorithm choose who goes first, and the Roku algorithm will pick lowest cost first, or if you're already subscribing to a Netflix, it will show you can watch this on Netflix and split it out.
Does it
So
actually do that? Because I'm not, I don't want to throw Comcast under the bus, because I think it's a good experience. We have Comcast and the Peacock app, but we use their voice remotes all the time. And we'll put in a title and we'll get search and we'll get 3 or 4 returns. It'll show us what apps they're on. Most of those seem to be paid, transactional or video on demand type of things. I just don't. I'm not 100% confident that if I already get it for free through a service, that's going to show up as a return for that search.
Well, Comcast, in terms of streaming search, is a little bit later to the game because as they've got the X1 and the X class TVs, so the
Yep.
number of channels that they have in search tends to be the top 100. So all the ones you would know of, and a lot of those are transactional and paid, right?
Mhm.
So they haven't got gravitas and
Okay.
criteria, and smaller movie apps aren't in there that might be free. So I think you will get a subset on Comcast of good channels, but it might be 150 channels total. And back in the cable days, we had 500 channels. So
Right.
you're really only searching about, and I can't give you the exact number, it's
Right.
probably not public. You're only getting the influence of 150 titles. Take that versus Vizio. Vizio requires that every app on their platform is searchable.
That's
It's a
great.
absolute requirement, which I think
Okay.
is.
So how does so back to even if the title I was looking for on an app within the top 100 is there, how do they know that I'm a subscriber to that app and I should get it for free versus pay $4 from some other service? And here's a challenge, and I don't think I'm very unique from a lot of consumers. I'm only a little bit because I'm an insider in this industry, and my family between myself and my kids, we probably subscribe to almost everything. We have Hulu and Disney and Peacock, as I mentioned, and Netflix, and all those different services. So there's a really good chance that we're going to get it for free if it's part of subscription. And I prefer that show up at the top. Is that how it actually works
I
in
don't think
reality?
no, I don't think in reality they
Okay.
if because oftentimes you can sign up for Netflix on netflix.com. So if you didn't sign up through the streaming, how do they know and how are they tracking? They won't have access to all of your subscription
So I
information.
need to know that. I need to know, oh, they're showing it's on Netflix. I have a Netflix subscription. So if I click that button, I'm going to be able to log in and get it for free.
Yes, I think it's a bit hit or miss because I use
Okay.
Roku, and a lot of the times they're telling me, "Oh, it'll give me a Netflix row, right?"
Mhm.
And it'll tell me these things are on Netflix because it knows that Roku knows because it's known me for so long,
Mhm.
right? But I think when you talk about other platforms, this is not they don't have a good database of what you're using, but it's part about. It's really the same thing that search is still not at a, I would say, 50% of how it should really be working. But
Mhm.
it's really good if you know what you want to watch. At least search gives you, I can watch it on Netflix. Oh, wait, it's free over here on
Mhm.
Tubi, or Plex has it. Okay.
Mhm.
So you will be able to have options come to you and find it, but you wouldn't know it's on Plex or Tubi unless that function for search was working.
Yeah. So it's fragmented, and that's part of your service. You can help solve that problem. Ideally, in a perfect world, who would ideally be responsible for managing that and making sure all the content for all the different apps gets indexed? Would it be you? Would it be the app? Would it be the platform? The reason I asked that is I was doing an interview with Catherine Pond from Vizio, and like them, many CTV platforms, they sort of call the herd, once a quarter, bottom 10, the bottom 25%. They're taking a look at and saying, hey, we're not getting a lot of engagement with their content, so therefore the app might be replaced by something else. But that could be because their content is just not being discovered. So I guess like in an ideal world, who would own that responsibility for being like the chief search architect, for instance?
Well, it belongs to the channel. If you're a
Okay.
channel and your job is to grow your audience, the function belongs within the marketing and audience acquisition team for the channel itself.
Okay.
Okay. And,
So you can't
and
delegate that. You got to take charge of it. You can't be like,
you have
"Oh,
to charge
I'm going to
because
connect with this CTV platform and just magically everything's going to work right."
Right. And you have to be aware that universal search is the lowest cost way that you can acquire a user organically who's actually highlighted the fact, I want to watch, Midnight in Paris, and you
Mhm.
happen to have it. So that person is super important to you.
Mhm.
You have to bang on the doors at these platforms, Samsung, Amazon, Apple, and you have to find your way in to get approved because the queue to get in, to get your data into search. Keep
Mhm.
in mind, we're talking about Siri and Alexa and
Right.
Google Assistant installed on 500 million devices. We're not talking about 50 million, here or 20 million,
Mhm.
25 million Vizio TVs. We're talking about a billion searches by voice, and you're not in it. Well, this
And you
I
don't
can,
even know either, right? It's not like they're giving a report and be like, "Hey, someone searched on this movie title and
yeah.
you showed up as like the seventh place return." It's a black hole, right? You just don't know.
Exactly. The search engines in the streaming TV OS wars are obfuscated and secret. We cannot
Okay.
see what people are searching because that data is not available. And we're actually trying to address this with a click tracker to try
Mhm.
to say, so you can put a content ID and a click and
Mhm.
say it came from search and make a report that says Midnight in Paris got clicked 1,000 times on the TNT app or something like that, where you can't see that today. You cannot tell which of my top 100 titles are being searched in any streaming ecosystem because they're not like Google. Those search engines are not open to any
Mhm.
of the businesses that put their data inside them.
Okay, but the platform search engines need to index the content libraries of all the apps on their platform. Is that right? For this to work properly.
Well, I think they need to do at least whatever they determine to be an adequate number. Because when they reach 200 channels and they've got, these channels have 200,000 titles in them,
Mhm.
we've reached a saturation point
Yeah.
where adding the 201st channel some places is not interesting to the
Right.
bigger platforms, right? So they won't. That's why the smaller and mid-sized players are actually being told, you know what, we're not really going to be able to onboard your metadata to
Mhm.
Alexa or Siri or Google Assistant because it's just too much work. And
Mhm.
as a business decision, we don't have the resources to have 10,000 apps in universal search. It's too
Mhm.
hard to get onboarded.
Yeah. You would think that would be in their best interest, though, because, I mean, we have these vast content libraries and people talk about content saturation, but, maybe we can kind of move and talk about the discovery part of things. But you'd imagine that these platforms would like the long tail as an option to kind of keep their viewers and subscribers engaged, right? Once they exhaust some of the top titles, maybe they do want to go into some of these more niche titles, but they need to be indexed to find them.
Yeah, well, this is really an interesting area because we believe everything should be there, frankly, but technology makes it hard. But so you can't, if you search for chair yoga, the only way you're going to find it is if somebody has a channel named chair yoga,
Mhm.
okay? Or if you search for whatever it is, we worked with a crafting app, made it myself, and the search engine was not looking for macrame. Let's just put it that way, unless macrame was in the title of the TV series. And even then, it was based on, we believe, on viewership. If you didn't have a million views, the
Mhm.
search engine wouldn't point to you.
Okay.
So the smaller guys, where it's most important to be discovered, because I have a funny cat app or I have,
Mhm.
a crocheting app. How do I get discovered when somebody searches crochet?
Mhm.
So this is an area that right now I think it's ripe for improvement, and
Mhm.
that's one of the areas we're looking at is how can you use title-based search to promote your app at very low cost by data engineering. Better data engineering and getting approval at the platform is a big deal.
So if you're one of these sort of niche apps, maybe not the top 100 or whatever, do you have to be even more specific with your titles to get returned for a search query?
Well, I think the truth is, search was all based originally on television and movies because
Okay.
that's what the television was, and we're still dealing with the legacy of that. The TV shows and movies dominate whatever people are searching for, and if it's not a TV show that you know of or
Mhm.
heard of, trying to go with something that is,
Mhm.
silly cat videos or planting tomatoes at home
Mhm.
DIY. That's really going to be a lot more difficult of a challenge than if it's Midnight in Paris. If
Mhm.
you have an actual movie and a TV show, things are designed still around Grace Note IDs, right?
Mhm.
There's still all this sort of the top 90% of the titles viewed are in 100 channels and they're movie and TV shows.
Mhm.
So that's the world we live in today. And those are the ones that need it the most. The small movie apps and the legacy TV show apps, all
Mhm.
those that aren't in search, if they're not in search, they're missing the most effective way to be discovered and grow their business.
Yeah, and is there outside of titles, what are the other top ways to search? Genre, actor,
Uh,
um,
I think it's
what?
yeah, actor and right now it literally is stars. Stars.
Yeah.
So if you're looking for Jerry Seinfeld, Dave Chappelle,
Mhm.
certainly it's how do you name so how are you naming if it's not a movie, let's say you create a new TV series, the title is so heavy. You want to create a TV series name that uses. We worked with Tastemade, and they had a show called India Bites. Okay, and you know what? Nobody's looking for India Bites, right? It's we used to laugh about it. It should have just been Indian cooking, and if
Mhm.
people would be looking for Indian cooking. So the actual use of a data naming strategy using either AI, this is something we think is really important to like news apps because they name their clips every day. Trump, Mar-a-Go-Go,
Mhm.
whatever, lawsuit
Mhm.
number 5.
Mhm.
What Israel-Gaza war? How are these things being searched to tie in to the ABC News app or the Sinclair News app? And they already know that they're not naming their news clips to be optimized for the search engines on the streaming ecosystem. So we're right in the middle of that right now, doing A/B testing to help realize this is free marketing, if you will. If you get
Right.
better at this, you can triple your app installs by
Right.
being smarter about how you title your news clips.
Well, this
Okay.
is why I was suggesting maybe maybe there's a hierarchy of roles here. Obviously, the app needs to take charge. They can't just, be naive that suddenly, if you build it or if you provide the content, they will come and the eyeballs and the viewers will be there and the advertising. But I do believe there's a role for the platform, some sort of data architect, because if you have 10 different true crime apps or content libraries, you want to be able to, I would imagine you'd want to be able to index them in some consistent way, right?
Right.
You mentioned news. That's a great example. Maybe it's Gaza war, date, a reporter name or whatever. Like how do you optimize the overall experience for the viewer if you own the platform?
Right. Well, this goes back to your Google SEO stuff. Are we doing Google search for video website? I think you borrow the learnings from what are the top 250 titles in Google that landed a deep link on your website to watch your show, right?
Okay.
So you learn and then you transfer that learning into, well, how do I use that in my data strategy? And even in my new show creation. So you mentioned like crime shows. Okay, so if I'm creating something, start to think about how do you put the right terms into your titles. And we've actually tested this where there was a show called related to crafting, and
Mhm.
we changed the title and we found that search worked by changing the title
Mhm.
because the title like India Bites in the Tastemade example is not going to be something that's searched. And that is one of the findings that we had. If you have content that is not known to anybody in the public and they're not searching for it,
Mhm.
search is going to have some difficulties.
Okay. So don't get too clever with your titles then. I mean, it's a lot like I used to run a digital marketing team and they would do search engine optimization and just a small tweak on the search query could, have a major impact on the results. And so you have to kind of constantly manage that. And the algorithm could change too over time. So you have to manage that as well.
Right, right. And it does depend on what your content library is. If you're
Mhm.
got, 1,000 movies in your Magnolia, well, they all have Grace Note IDs. They're all well
Mhm.
known. There's nothing, not a lot of magic in this. You don't need to change much. You just need to get everything to work. And you have
Mhm.
to your images have to be the right size. Your deep links have to work, and you have to get yourself on every platform so that people, when they're saying, "Hello, Alexa, can I watch The Illusionist?" and that you show up. And that's the challenge for any normal movie channel is just to get your data right, to get into Amazon so that when
Mhm.
whatever this billion Amazon searches a day, you need to be in that search.
Right.
And a great majority of the mid-size movie apps aren't in search today because they don't know that. Okay.
So they don't know that. So you mentioned it earlier, Steve. You mentioned AI. That was a big theme from the summit a couple of weeks ago, is the role that AI play. What is the balance between the machines, machine learning, AI, and the service that you provide, kind of more the human element, understanding this overall sort of search architecture?
Well, again, the search algorithms are changed by the platform. So unless that search algorithm is using AI itself to find subgenre, microgenre,
Mhm.
to use ACR and figure out what's in there and then do things. Well, it doesn't matter what we do. For example, if you put a Grace Note ID next to, Midnight in Paris, you could have all the greatest AI in the world, and that will be thrown out when you ingest it to a platform
Mhm.
because they will have a content ID at Roku, for example, and it'll be the Grace Note ID, and they'll throw away all the metadata that we got and wonderful AI produced data, and
Mhm.
they'll map to the Grace Note ID, and that's all you will see in the search result. It will have the year with all the basic, because they're just trying to make sure we have Midnight in Paris.
Okay.
That's all they want to know. Okay, so today, I think where you can change the title in the news,
Mhm.
the weather, and things like this, where you can change the title that's actually being searched. I think that's where we're going to put an AI engine in and come up with, the Hurricane Tampa ABC
Mhm.
KTLA or whatever the call name, and we're going to generate a set of terms into the title
Okay.
so that anybody in Tampa searching ABC News, the hurricane, is going to be dedicated, actually sent to that
Mhm.
search. That's where I think where it's clip-based search on Roku, for
Okay.
example,
But
not
what
on.
you're doing is you're automating sort of the convention for changing the title based on date or, whatever the event might be, whether it's weather or, current events or something like that. So you're automating that part, but you still need to have sort of a convention to get, indexed into the search.
Correct. No, we do the actual ingestion of the titles
Yep.
still, and it's actually upstream of us. Is to say you need to have a strategic naming engine to your clips for news because that will double your installs if you have the right names up there that work in the search engine. And nobody's been doing this yet. There's a few people playing around trying to own search, and we even talk about gamifying search.
Hmm.
Who owns news search in the streaming ecosystem on Roku right now? And there's a few players out there that have realized, wow, if I do this, that, and the other, every news search goes to my aggregation news app.
Hmm.
And I can become the best news aggregator in the country by optimizing my search inside Roku and my metadata. And there's only a couple of people doing it. So that's where I think search is way more powerful than we actually know. And if you start to understand how it works, you can really increase your results in terms of new app installs, new user acquisitions by being smart in the data engineering side,
Hmm.
particularly outside of standard movies and standard TV shows.
Yep. Do you have any case studies you can share with us? I mean, is it as simple as, hey, we engage, Steve's team and we do what we need to do, and then suddenly we get more app downloads or more content, views or plays or whatever. How does that maybe give us some examples if you don't
Well,
mind?
I would say, for example, I know I gave the example of India Bytes didn't have any search results. First of all, we're building a tool to track so that the content ID will in search will report what came up. So we can actually work with a company to say,
Okay.
give us three title names. We'll assign three content IDs and we'll put them in and we'll see that title name A outperformed C by 300%.
So that's similar to SEO, right? Like you're
Yeah,
kind of doing A/B kind of analysis.
yeah, but you can do this before. You cannot actually track what this right out of the gate. The
Okay.
tools aren't on the platform in the analytics to show you what are my top 100 search titles on Roku, Amazon, Google, and Samsung. That tool doesn't exist.
So there's an iteration required.
Yeah, right. So we're having to do workarounds to try to get
Okay.
the content ID. But I think this is what's cool. It's a really interesting area that you can actually figure out how to do it better.
Hmm.
And I mean, if you can improve your search results by 50%, that there's a small cost to doing it.
Hmm.
And that's like, getting your $3 app installed down to 50 cents
Hmm.
and, as many times as you want to do. Right. Where would I spend my money to get new users? This is one of the areas that people must have a search strategy and a data strategy inside these search engines if they're trying to grow their audience and maintain their audience, and everybody is.
Yep. So is it safe to say that if you have a customer that engages you for, implementing this sort of search strategy, this architecture, in your experience, they're going to get an increase in app downloads and, plays of their content library?
We have been, I would say, 90% successful.
Okay.
And often, I mean, we did 5 case studies in a row where the Roku app installs increased. The smallest amount was 500% in
Hmm.
5 straight case studies. And they were all title-based LGBT movies, independent film, things like that. So they were being searched. And then we had some that weren't movies and like the crafting app that we actually were able to see results where we made changes to
Hmm.
the titles only because they weren't using the terms that they should have been using in the titles.
Hmm.
And we were able to, literally, there was almost no search results because the titles didn't contain searchable terms. And when we did it, we were able to see significant improvements. But it was still not the kind of performance that we would have expected,
Okay.
hoped for, because the keywords, for example, if you put in craft and DIY and macrame, the keywords were not being weighted in the search engines. And so they weren't impacting the results. Even though we were improving the data and doing the work to optimize the search, it
Right.
wasn't resulting in a benefit.
Well, it sounds like to a degree, the platform search engines are kind of dumbing down the data. So all the wonderful tags you might do for your content library, for your app, that's not all getting reflected in the overall kind of search, mechanism by let's say the connected TV platform. Is that right?
I might not use that term. I would say
Okay. Not
simplifying it.
dumbing down. Okay.
Yeah,
Simplifying.
the platforms have simplified it to title-based movie, TV
Okay.
shows at the start, and most recently they've been adding sports because sports search. I mean, you got to know what channel the playoff game's on, and you got to know
Yep.
what time it's starting, and you got to know right now. But in fact, if you look at, well, why haven't they improved the streaming search engines? Well, most of them have yet to get, like, if you want to watch Thursday Night Football, you can barely realize it's on Amazon Prime right
Yep.
now. And so Sports Search, Vizio is I'm sure they're working on it. So they're working on fundamental things to say,
Mhm.
where is the NBA game and where's the NFL game today? And when we run around and say, well, what about keyword search?
Mhm.
They're like, well, we got to get major sports live in Universal Search.
And you're right, that is a tricky one because you have team, you have the league, you have the date, right? Is it fresh? Is it live? Is it on demand? I'll give you an example. This is just a few weeks ago. Of course, I'm a big fantasy football fan, and I just searched on Thursday Night Football, right? And the game popped up. I'm like, oh, there we go. I started playing. It took me about 20 minutes to realize I was watching a recording of last Sunday's game. And I'm like, wait, I'm looking at my data, on my phone, being like, okay, this isn't the right score. And I'm like,
Right.
oh, great. So, but why did it do that? It's Thursday Night Football. It's Thursday night. I'm obviously looking for the live, broadcast for that team and not something from the video on demand library.
Were you searching on Google on an Android phone? I
No,
mean,
I was searching, again, this is a Comcast search.
right.
So, but again, it'll go. I don't know. That's actually part of the problem, right? Because they knew that it was on Amazon, so I got there, but I didn't get the right title I was looking for, which was actually a live, streaming broadcast in real time.
Right. Well, this is. I mean, I think sports search. First of all, the searcher is the most fanatic. I got to know where the darn game is.
Yep.
It's 5:10. Where is it? Right. But we're immature. They don't have IDs related to all of these events.
Mhm.
Sports rights are broken up all over the place now.
Okay.
Right. And so they have to have all this metadata, and that infrastructure with all the change rights doesn't exist yet. And the implementation at Comcast and at different platforms
Mhm.
is definitely ongoing. They're
Mhm.
adding all this right now, and I'm sure they have a team on it trying to address this very subject because sports search is probably number one priority
Mhm.
in the streaming ecosystem because of the fanatical nature and the money being spent on
Yeah,
gambling. And
huge billions of dollars for these licensing fees. So they want to get a return on that. So it sounds like, Steve, from this conversation, there's a big challenge here. There's not a silver bullet. It's not like you can just flick a switch or buy a product and have all of these search related challenges go away. And now your content's fully indexed and optimized. And, if you're an app, let's say more of a, maybe not a top 100 app, you're suddenly going to have all of your titles show up and you're going to make a ton of money. Like there's some heavy lift here, right?
Yeah, I think, well, we start with Roku with any app. The
Okay.
first the first thing, Plex guy said it best. It was Scott at Plex said you would be really not very smart not to have a universal search streaming strategy and to
Mhm.
be in universal search everywhere. It's the best tool for app discovery and user acquisition that you can get, most cost effective. So you have to have a plan. Roku has no limitations. You can just go into Roku and put your app in search with us, or you can hire your own other team to go do it. Okay.
Mhm.
So that is game one. Roku's responsible for half of streaming in the United States.
Mhm.
You should be in Roku search today. And
So
if you're
start
not,
there. Okay.
yeah, just start there and ask your app developer, have they done it? Talk to us, whatever. It takes probably now, it's not just that simple. It's gotten a little bit more complicated because there's a lot of traffic at the gate, and the smaller guys, they benefit the most, but it's
Mhm.
the most difficult to get priority when you say, hey, my deep link's not working. What's the matter? That takes 8 weeks to resolve. So
Mhm.
get a strategy for universal search. Marketing departments need to know that universal search is 5 times less expensive than paying for an ad, and stop paying for ads when they haven't done universal search,
Okay.
right?
And that's hard for the marketers because they know their world. They've got a budget. They want to, spend money on viewer acquisition. They're going to rent space on the platform, whatever. So you sort of need to get a higher level than that and say, hey, wait, there's a better way to spend your money, right? There's a better optimized sort of approach here.
Yeah, well, and I think marketing departments don't want to talk to engineering departments. It's like I have to talk to engineering to get an ad, right? And engineering will say, "I'm sorry, we're busy. Our
Right.
roadmap's full for the year," right? So
Yeah.
that's actually why we exist. It's like you don't need to use your engineering. Come to us, and we've built a process to do it.
Hmm.
But it's effective, and I think it's really it's not part of the user acquisition strategy for most of the channels that streaming video search needs to be priority one in 2024. Okay, that's the problem.
Yeah, and it sounds like also, I mean, with your experience and everything, it's not just the service provide. I mean, yes, you could have your own engineering team, you can kind of get your search strategy figured out, but you have relationships with these platforms too, and that helps, right? Especially when you're trying to solve some of these problems.
Oh, absolutely. No, it's an, I'm, my team is like the department of loose ends
Mhm.
because you're actually dealing with three engineering departments. You have the streaming platform, Roku, Apple, Amazon, Samsung, right? Then you'll have a content management system that
Mhm.
can be done by JW players. Then you have an app
Right.
developer. So, and then you have us. So
Mhm.
we manage these process, and because we've been through all the failures, we know 100 ways that search doesn't work, and
Mhm.
we avoid them automatically. And then we solve the problems that come up inevitably.
Yep.
So and they like when we're involved, because if you have to make a metadata feed the first time for Amazon or Google, it's going to take you, you're going to have to learn a whole new language, a
Right.
whole new metadata spec, and it's not that simple. It's doable.
Right.
I just think now with AI and what's happening in the marketplace around increased competition, that there's a great opportunity that people are still the majority of apps are not in universal search. Okay, more than half, or whatever the number is.
Mhm.
And this is something that they should have somebody assigned to figure it out. If I'm launching an app, first thing I'm going to do is going to be discoverable by search, because how
Mhm.
else are they going to find me? I have
Yeah,
to.
exactly. So you guys provide this service. It's beneficial, obviously, to the app. It helps with their bottom line. Let's kind of go upstream, a little bit and talk about the industry. Is this going to be a problem that's going to be solved by the industry in some sort of standards-based way, let's say 5 years from now? Or is this going to be an ongoing challenge? Maybe it only gets exacerbated by the fact that we have even more content coming down the pipeline. What's your view on that?
Well, I did a thing with Colin Dixon. He wrote an article called "Universal Search is a Distant Dream" in 2017,
Mhm.
uh, and we revisited it 5 years later, and it was basically, is it still broken? And the answer was, Yes, it's indeed still broken. Now we've got
Okay.
there is no standard emerging. There's a few people that have said maybe I could take a Roku feed and just use that for my platform
Mhm.
because mine's completely different. But because it involves so many moving pieces, we don't see any standardization coming around. And this still will be you have to make a separate metadata feed for each search engine. And the rewards go to the bigger apps
Mhm.
because the top 100, 99 of them are in universal search. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And to get sort of an industry standard of all the players that have to cooperate and share data and work together, and that's going to sub-optimize their own business models and their own kind of promoting of their most profitable content, partnerships, right?
Correct, correct. So basically, it's almost a brute force. I mean,
Mhm.
you have to learn what's going on, and you have to knock on the doors at the big ecosystem and say, sorry, but I really am an important app, and you need to give me a place in the queue, and it might take you a year. But I don't see any standardization, at least around the universal search metadata.
Mhm.
I just don't see one, particularly as AI comes in, it's going to get even more complicated.
Yeah, it's really too bad, Steve, because I see some of the challenges of the industry. Some are being fixed, and I think AI will overall be a positive thing for the industry and automate some things. But this sort of this internal tension in the industry with the different platforms and content, the owners of these libraries are kind of at loggerheads. It has a major detriment on the overall user experience for the viewer and the subscriber, and that frustration I don't think is going to be resolved in anytime soon.
Well, one of the things we saw was like the platforms have made it so difficult. So there was an LGBT channel that I'm like, you're never going to get in Google because you're just a small LGBT channel, subscription channel. It's a brand name. Okay. And all of a sudden I saw they were in Google search. I'm like, what the heck is that? How did they do that? And it turns out that the platforms are making Amazon channels, Google primetime channels, and Roku channels. And so basically, if the platform makes your channel for you instead of you having a standalone app where their rev share is 50% versus 15, then they put you in search. And all of a sudden, the power of the algorithm is so great that it would drive a smaller app to say, forget it, I'm not going to build my own channel. I'll build one with a partner. I'll give up more revenue
Mhm.
because if I get 10 times more revenue and I have to give up 50%, I still got 5 times more revenue by having them
Oh,
build it
interesting.
for
That's
me.
that's really counterintuitive too, because I mean, in the conversations I've had with some of the apps, the OTT apps, and then the CTV platforms, there's that negotiation, and you naturally put your business hat on. You're going to say, I want to give up the least amount of a rev share, but you're saying that can be against your interest, right? Because if they're making more money on it, you're going to get optimized in the search algorithm.
Yeah, I had one of the same guy told me, my Amazon built my channel, okay? And so I'm in Amazon search. I'm getting Alexa again on all those
Mhm.
devices. And he said, I pay for advertisements on Amazon. I pay them and I cannot match the power of the Amazon search engine. So
Mhm.
I stopped advertising because the algorithm itself, when you're inside Prime and you're inside the Amazon and what have you, was driving so many new subscribers to him that he wouldn't even pay an ad. And his decision to be in Amazon channels, long before he was in he made a standalone Roku channel. He
Mhm.
got 10 times more subscribers on Amazon than he had on Roku, and that was because he was built as a channel inside the Amazon search engine.
Mhm.
Literally, he was successful on one platform versus another because he let them build the channel. It was a good business decision for him in the long term to go ahead and share more revenue.
Yep. Makes total sense. So interesting. Well, it's messy and it's lumpy and it's fragmented, and it takes folks like yourself, Steve, to bring some sense to it and to help these apps. I'm a big believer in the long tail and innovation and many of these different apps and services that are representing different voices and stuff. So kudos to you and your good work. And we'll be posting a white paper that'll further explain some of the things that Steve and I just talked about. So this is great, Steve. I really, really appreciate your insights today.
Yeah, all right. Well, I know you're going to CES too. We'll be out at CES. And if anybody wants to chat, they can reach us through the link in the podcast here.
Yep.
And we just think it's a wonderful field. There's more good things to come as we start tracking the clicks next year, and looking forward to talking with folks in the business at CES next week.
That's great, Steve. All right. Awesome. Thank you so much for your time. Again, this is Brian Mahoney, CEO of Trend Research and president of the OTT Executive Podcast. Today, we've been joined by Steve Harnsberger, the CEO of Universal Search and Discovery. Thank you so much, Steve.
Hey, thanks, Brian. Appreciate it. Take it easy. Bye.
Signing off, everybody.
All
Have a
right, bye.
great day.